Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Blueprint Podcast. Real people, real stories. Chasing dreams, overcoming obstacles. Come get inspired and take action. I know you're ready. Let's go.
Welcome back to the Entrepreneurial Blueprint. Today I have a really exciting guest, Brendan Whiting. Brendan, how are you?
Freaking amazing, man. What an intro.
Yeah.
I like that little intro video, dude. That's sick.
I appreciate it. Shout out to Carney's wife, Lexi. She's the best with the marketing stuff. She does all of our marketing for the podcast, for our company CR3. So definitely couldn't do this without her. So I think, I could try to sit here and give you an intro, but it wouldn't do you justice because you're doing some really awesome things. You are killing it. Your social media following is unbelievable. I don't want to take away from your accomplishments. So why don't you tell the listeners exactly what you do, and we can go from there.
You're the man, bro. I appreciate the kind words. So what I do today is, I'm Andy Elliott's top sales producer. So basically what that means is, not only do I offer pretty much anything that the Elliott Group offers, which we're a sales training, life development company. So we have, courses, masterminds, etc., events to help salespeople and business owners level up holistically, in every area. Because as you know, like business owners have a lot of problems. It's like there's pillars of life we got to have: faith, family, fitness, finance. Like these are all, people define it different ways what the pillars of life are, but like those are four that we really focus heavily on. So a lot of business owners have one piece of the puzzle figured out, and they feel like in order to get one to its highest degree, you got to sacrifice all the other ones, right? So, right. We try to push this message of, you can have it all in life, right? So I offer all that stuff, but also I do my own consulting as well, because what Andy's really instilled in me is like the coach's heart, where like I love coaching people. So for the past 3 years, that's how long I've been with Andy. I've been mentoring salespeople, working personally with business owners, coaches, consultants, and I love it, dude. I help people build their sales teams. I help coaches, consultants grow, people grow their personal brands. Like it's a lot of fun, man. We love it. So
let's start from your coaching sales teams. Is this of any industry?
Yeah, great question. So pretty much any industry. I like to put it like this: like there's width and then there's depth, if that makes sense. So, like from a width perspective, I believe a lot of like what we do in sales transcends any industry. So I think like if you can communicate, if you learn how to, basically sales is being a master communicator, right?
Right.
You could take any salesperson from any industry. For example, I went from car sales, making about $250,000 a year selling cars as a 21-year-old, to coming out here doing high ticket sales for Andy and becoming near 7-figure a year earner, because that skill's transferable, right? And there's been companies before that have hired me to go sell life insurance on the phone and talk to their live leads or things like that, and it's pretty much transferable. So I define that as width, right? Like some of these skills transcend. There's other industries, like there's specific industries that we go really deep with. So we have like tons of products we can offer. So like coaches and consultants, for example, like if a guy wants to be an online coach, obviously we've got a 9-figure education company. Like we can help a guy like that scale massively because we have all those systems we can give him too, So, I mean, to answer your question though, as far as sales goes and leadership, I think it transcends pretty much any industry that you get into, for the most part.
Okay. So what makes, this is going to sound a pretty open-ended question, might be a little nuanced in your answer, but what makes a salesman a good salesman?
That's a great question, man. So I break it down like this, right? I like to take a 10,000-foot view on everything, right? So from a macro perspective, sales really boils down to two things, and that's your mindset and then your skill set, right? So I put work ethic, perspective, limiting beliefs under the mindset portion. And then I put the tactics, the techniques, the experience under the skill set portion. I think that the more you can dial in both, the better you're going to become. And like, you have to put in work on both sides of the spectrum, right? And the reason I say that is like this. I know plenty of talented people that can't make it in sales. Like, I've seen so many salespeople. So I'm sure you've seen this before. You hire a salesperson in one of your companies and you're like, this guy's going to be a dog. Like, he's obviously the best looking salesperson that we have now in the company. He has great energy, a great attitude. He seems to be extremely confident, but within 2 weeks, he quits with a little bit of rejection. And you're like, dude, if that guy just had the mindset, he would be a multimillionaire pretty quick. Right. So we see that all the time. But then, like I said, you have the mindset portion and the skill set portion. Because the other thing is, you can have a guy with a great mindset. And I like to put it like this, right? Like Abraham Lincoln. So I always say success leaves clues. So I quote historians and stuff that works really well. Abraham Lincoln said, if you told me to cut down a tree, I'm going to spend the first few hours sharpening the axe. So a lot of times, a lot of guys in sales, they swing the hammer really hard. Like, they put in enough calls, enough reps to be successful, but they never sharpen the axe, right? So I think from a macro perspective, those are the two things you always got to be working on. And I'll say one last thing on this, right, before we get off this, because this is really, if there was a message that I had, like, one, if I had to sum up what I teach salespeople in one message, it would be this: every salesperson has leashes on their brain. We all have limiting beliefs as to what we can accomplish, right? We have self-image problems, and that's ultimately what it holds most people back. Is like, they think, I could never be a 7-figure earner. I can never be a multi-6-figure earner. Like, they just don't see it happening for themselves, right? I always quote, I heard this quote, and the guy's name, I'm blanking on it, popular author, but he said, we question every belief we have except for the beliefs we believe the most, right? So, like, you talk to somebody and they're like, you're like, dude, you can make multiple 6 figures. You can do this, that. And he's like, yeah, but you don't get it. I fill in the blank with a limiting belief, and I fill in the blank with limiting belief. See, this guy, like, he has deep wired beliefs that are responsible for where he's at. And until you can get someone to, like, admit that, like, their beliefs are not serving who they want to actually become, they can't change, right? So a guy who's completely unlocked in his mindset, all he needs is the tactics, and then he's going to win. But most people don't need the tactics. They need to unleash their minds on what's possible. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
Me, yeah, like and real quick, like me, I'm completely unleashed. Like, there was a time in my life where, because I grew up drug addict parents, family members, divorced at a young age, went to multiple different school districts growing up, had zero confidence, found sports. I found basketball really early on in my life, took that all the way to college, but then dropped out my first year as a D2 college basketball player because I was doing drugs, drinking a lot of alcohol, getting distracted. So I dropped out because I couldn't maintain both. So I chose the negative shit, right?
Right, yeah.
Went down a bad path for 3 years. And I was 21 years old one day. I woke up and I, like, had tens of thousands of dollars of court debt, been arrested multiple times, wrecked multiple cars, burned a lot of bridges. I was living on a buddy's couch, and I just felt like a complete loser, right? And from there, I found car sales, then found Andy Elliott's videos. And I had a limiting belief that Andy helped me overcome. That was kind of the first time in my life that I really audited my beliefs, right? I remember I started selling cars and I was making three grand a month. And I was like, this isn't going to work, because I had just met my girlfriend, who's now my fiance. We had a place, and we had bills and, stuff like that. So I was like, I can't get by making a couple grand a month. But I never really asked myself, like, am I a 6-figure earner? Could I ever do that? And then I started watching Andy's videos, and, as Andy Elliott, like, he talks about skill set, but he also talks a lot about the mindset portion. And he's like, kept beating into me, like, dude, you can do this. Cut the leash, total recreation, new birth certificate, new identity. And something clicked. I went to 6 figures, went to $250,000, moved out here, still had limiting beliefs. Never thought I could be doing what I'm doing today. But, like, every step of the way, Andy's been showing me like, hey, there's another level. There's another level.
Right.
So now I'm completely unlocked. I'm just like, once you get to that point, it's just a matter of like the tactics, right?
Yeah, and to your point, I think it's interesting. I'm reading a great book right now by Thomas Sowell, who some consider the greatest economist of our generation. And something that stuck out to me in his book, the idea of knowledge, that we grow up in school looking on Instagram, right? Our perception of what knowledge and intelligence is, you think of an astrophysicist, someone working for NASA. Well, we're told that that guy's a genius and
Yeah.
that's what being smart looks like. But then Thomas Sowell throws out this theory, this idea of consequential knowledge. Just because astrophysicist knows how to get to the moon, what that doesn't apply to, say, Carney Freifogel in Hanover, PA, who's growing a roofing company and teaching guys how to sell roofs, right? The salesman at CR3 or the salesman for these franchises at CR3 around the country, they're worried about selling roofs, siding, and windows.
Yeah.
And they, guess what, make a shitload of money doing it.
Exactly.
They don't really care about the stars and the moon. They want to make sure that they can provide for their family. They can become the best versions of themselves. So I think it's interesting that you're not just teaching one version of how to sell, right? This is sales as a whole. And that idea of consequential knowledge, you go into these industries and say, look, I don't maybe know what you're selling. I don't know how you're selling it. I don't know the first thing about it. I do know that you can become a better version of yourself doing whatever you're doing. And first, you need to unlock, as you say, sharpen the axe. You need to unlock your mindset.
Yeah.
And just like you're a basketball player, I talk a lot about how I was a high school baseball player, played college baseball. So if you go into, it's funny too. Yesterday, I coach varsity baseball now as well. Yesterday was the first time I faced live batting practice against our pitchers in 4 years. And just going up to the plate, I was so confident in high school and college because I knew how good I was. I knew I could be really good. Yesterday, I went up a little timid because I hadn't seen that live pitching. So automatically in my brain, I had a perception that this is going to be rough.
Yeah.
Even though it's the same pitching I faced thousands, hundreds of thousands of times in my career. So I'm starting to understand where you're talking about the mindset and sharpening those tools and unlocking your potential.
Yeah. Real quick on that note, you made a really good point, right? So there is a part of our brain, which I'm sure you've heard this before, but I kind of tie it to what you're talking about with the book you're reading. And it's called the reticular activating system, right? So like, for example, great people, they consume, everything they see, hear, and everything they experience around them. They tie it to, how can I sell more roofs, right? If you want to be the best. So like, that's kind of how I take that, right? Like, you can learn from how they got to the moon and like the mindset print. You like take the things that could help you,
right?
But like, you don't need to learn about that because it doesn't apply, to exactly what you're doing,
Yeah, and you're exactly right. The other night I watched a movie, Tetris, with my girlfriend, and it was really intriguing. The movie was about how Tetris came worldwide, and it was during the USSR, so in the Soviet Union, which they couldn't monetize anything, privately. It was all for my country. I love my country, so the country's going to make money. But this guy, he lived in Japan, but he's from the United States, wanted Tetris. So he was flying to the USSR, which is almost a death sentence if you're not from there. But he was, in his mind, he said, I want this game. I want this game. And I think people, and you'll touch on this a lot more, I'm sure, and I want to hear it, but I think it just starts off with people saying, I want to accomplish this. I want to do this, or I want to do that. If you know where you're starting and where you want to end, the journey's a lot easier. But if you don't know where you want to end, then you're kind of just, it's like sort of driving.
Yeah.
I'm at my house now and I want to drive to Florida. Well, I need directions then. But if I just get in my car and say I'm going to drive, I don't know where I'm driving. What kind of direction? Where do I even start? Because I don't know where I'm going.
So I heard this the other day, right? In Alice in Wonderland, a guy, or she comes to a fork in the road, right? And there's like an owl up in the tree, and he goes, "Where are you trying to go?" Or she's like, "I'm lost. Do you know which way I need to go?" And he goes, "Well, where do you want to end up?" And she goes, "I don't know." And he goes, "Well, either route will take you there."
Oh,
You know what I
wow.
mean?
Yeah.
And I agree with you 100%. I think that, so I always tell every sales leader I sit down with, I believe the most important skill is being able to cast the vision, right? Because, most people don't have dreams or a vision. If they did, they'd own a business, probably, right? Or they'd be achieving at the max potential that they could be achieving at, right? So your job is kind of like a business owner or a sales leader, I should say, is to get people, your salespeople, to have some sort of vision for where they want to go, right? Because a guy with a vision versus a guy without one is gonna way outperform that guy, right? Like I put it like this too, like even at the Elliott Group, like you look at two salespeople and they do the same thing, and some people see their work as meaningful, and some people see their work as just like normal work. Like I find my work very meaningful, and that's why I perform at a high level, because I know it's meaningful. You know what I mean? And also I have a vision for where I want to go. So as a leader, you got to be able to sit down with your salespeople and be able to cast some sort of vision, right? One, their vision has to be able to fit inside of yours, because once their vision outgrows the business owners, then that's when they go start their own business, right? Like we've all read the stories before where, some entrepreneurs, they kept going to their boss and saying, "Hey, I want a bigger opportunity. I see this opportunity gap we could go attack." And then pretty soon, if the boss continues to like not be open-minded to it, the guy leaves and goes and builds a business, right? So like as a business owner, it's like your vision's got to stay huge, so that way everybody's can fit inside of it. You got, when you recruit, whether you're going out to recruit or to promote somebody on your team, you got to be able to like cast this vision of like, hey, so I had this idea. What if you join my team? You sold $2 million your first year, made X amount of dollars, and then 3 years from now you maybe got promoted and then you're making millions of dollars per year. What if that could happen? Like you kind of you make it clear. Does that make sense?
Right.
And like Daniel G, right? Daniel G, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a popular sales trainer. He says, buy the dream, sell the dream, live the dream, right? Like you got to be able to sell people the dream, whether that's a customer or whether that's even somebody on your team, right?
Yeah. And I want to make 2 points here. Where the first point, I think it was your Instagram reel the other day. I think you were talking about uh, Ramsey, Dave Ramsey,
Yeah.
when he walked into his office and his boss started yelling at him. And he just walked out. His boss, what are you doing? Right. And he kind of understood that I'm an entrepreneur and I know where I belong. I know what I can accomplish.
Yeah.
And I've already taken care of this. I don't need to be here working for you, because even though I want to, if you're not going to give me the respect, well, I already set up another journey somewhere else that I can go take care of myself. But I think you also mentioned when you started earlier about the pillars, the foundational pillars,
Yeah.
and I want to dive in a little bit to this because this is really important to me. I'm a religious guy. I mean, I'm Jewish. I love religion. I love the Bible. And as you said, your work is meaningful to you, and God literally tells us you should work. You should work. Right, the beginning of the Bible, Adam and Eve. Right, he tells Adam, now that you messed up, you need to work, but you need to love the work. You need to love the work. You need to provide. You need to go out. But it's not just about work. It's about the pillars of success, which is creating a family, right? Getting married, having kids, if that's what you want. Extracurriculars, giving back to your community. It's not just about work. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that this is part of your training, but when you are bringing in successful employees that you believe can be successful, they're multifaceted in their entire life, meaning they're not just good at one thing, and that's work. They're good fathers, they're good coaches, they're good, they give back to the community, they're part of a church group maybe, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And that, if you're a salesman, you're trying to sell them something, or you're trying to sell them a dream, well, you have to also have already conquered that yourself, or at least have an idea of what that's supposed to look like. Because you can't sell someone something unless you personally believe it and live it yourself.
Exactly. I'll say a couple things on that, right? So first of all, if the conversation that we're having, or if anybody watching this, like their objective is to build a great sales team, right? Then I think the most important thing is to remember that a 10 out of 10 person won't go work for a 7 out of 10 person. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
they might join, like there's the opportunity, and then there's the mentorship that comes along with it, the potential for growth. So like if I'm looking at two different roofing companies and one of them they both offer the same pay plan, I'm just going to look at my next deciding factor is I'm going to go look at who's running it and like, do I perceive them as further along the journey than I am? And if that's true, then I'll choose that person. Does that make sense?
Right.
So I think that's super important. And yeah, like Andy says it all the time. He's like, dude, if you have two people and they're the same skill set, same mindset, but this guy's home life is trash and this guy's home life is solid, this guy's going to kick this guy's ass,
Right.
because, and like I've always said that, like my strategic advantage, so a couple of my strategic advantages in sales, and I teach people this stuff because this falls under mindset, but like this stuff is super important to know. So one, from 16 years old, when I started doing drugs and drinking alcohol and stuff like that, I did that for 5 years, like almost every day, doing either drinking or doing some sort of drug. So I'm already worn out on all that stuff. Like that was 5 years ago. It's been like 3 years since I've touched 4 years, actually 4 years since I've touched any of that. And I've drank probably once or twice in the past couple of years. Right. That gives me a strategic advantage because most people never went too far off the rails to like realize the real consequences of doing that kind of stuff. And I avoid it completely because I want to keep my mind clear.
Right.
Also, I'm in a very committed relationship, so I'm not distracted. I've crushed so many people because they're just as good as me, if not better, but they're chasing distractions. They're going out to bars, trying to impress people, things like that. And then the last thing I'll say is this: I don't fall for a lifestyle creep, right? Like, so going back to earlier, you asked me, about how I help people and stuff like that. So the conversations I have with business owners when they reach out is like, hey man, what do you guys really need to hit the next level? And I'll be honest with you, man, more often than I actually onboard people and, join, partner with them, I turn them away from our services sometimes. Like sometimes I'm like, hey man, you don't need this. Like I can help you here, but I'll refer out this.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's for one reason. That's because I've strategically set myself up financially to where, I don't need to rely on the next sale. So people can tell that I don't have like commission breath, right? And I think too many salespeople, they outlive what they make. And, they don't think long-term enough.
Well, that's
That's
actually
a huge advantage for me.
one of the things I learned from Carney when I was younger. I used to go out and canvas with him when he first started the company with my dad, and they were really growing it. And I watched Carney, I knocked on the door, got Carney this inspection, and he was talking to the homeowner. And Carney, it was a great lead. I mean, I think it was, they had roof damage from a storm. The homeowner was really motivated to go through with this. And I heard Carney tell the homeowner, look, whether you use us or not, I'm just going to be straight here. This is what you should do. He wasn't saying use us, right? You need to use us. We can take care of this. He wasn't pushing on them.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying, look, I would love for you to use us, but if you find someone else, make sure they're giving you this.
Yeah.
And that homeowner, I could see in their eyes, built a bridge of trust with them because he was essentially selling them what was best for them. Exactly. He wasn't saying you have to use us to get this done right. He was saying, if you use us, and we'd love for you to, we'll obviously tell you what you need and give you the best service. But if you find someone else that you trust, make sure they're giving you X.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the other thing that is really, again, I keep harping on this, and that you mentioned you don't drink, you keep or do drugs, you keep your head clear, you're in a committed relationship. I think it's overlooked so much when we talk about the success now. I mean, you look at Instagram and all of these influencers. There was one that just went viral. I think it was Ashton Hall.
Yeah, Ashton Hall's actually coming out here in a couple of weeks for one of our events.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and you could see that how committed he really, disciplined he really was. Yeah. And that discipline, I tell people, the one thing that if anybody asks for my advice, I always tell them, motivation's a fleeting attribute.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you could watch a movie like Rocky or Creed, right? And you walk out of the theater completely changed person, saying, I'm going to wake up at 5 o'clock tomorrow and I'm going to go but eventually you're not going to want to wake up at 5 o'clock anymore. But if you can conquer the discipline aspect, and I know people laugh at, the videos at what Ashton did, but there is something to it that if you can conquer that discipline where you know what's going to make you a better person, for him, it could be that
Oh yeah.
dunking his head in water and putting on nice clothes and getting nice meals and surrounding himself with good people and sprinting and this and that. For me, it could be getting up at 6 o'clock and going to, whether it's church or synagogue and then coming back and doing work and spending time with your family, but staying disciplined on what's really important to you.
Yeah.
The stuff that will actually benefit you in the long run, not alcohol, right? We live in a, I think, a culture that we love short-term benefits, short-term enjoyment.
Amen. Yeah. Totally
No long-term gain from that. So
yeah.
I think what you're preaching is just super important. And obviously I feel like I'm almost selling back to you right now what you teach everybody, but I think it's really just really cool what you're doing.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Well, a couple things on that, right? So first of all, the funny part about Ashton Hall is people laugh at that guy, but that guy makes money.
Yeah.
Because of his discipline, because of his routines. And now it's just getting supercharged because of people making fun of him, right? Like now the whole world knows who he is. You know what I mean? So they basically solidified him forever being successful. But there was something else that you mentioned about, you talked about discipline and motivation and things like that and short-term satisfaction, right? I think once you become wise enough in life, like once you play the short-term satisfaction game enough, it gets worn out. Like, and the reason that I have a unique perspective, and it's funny, I literally posted a video yesterday because like my social media following starting to grow a little bit naturally. Whenever it grows, just so everybody knows, you start getting a lot of hate, right? So I do get hate a lot. But the way I confront it is like, people are like, dude, like you're trying to coach people on everything. And I'm like, my defense is like, look, man, like I only coach people on things I've been able to do, right? You'll never see me trying to teach somebody how to do something that I haven't done in my own life. And one of the things that like really is important to me is I played the short term game enough. Like I fell for the trick of like, go party, go drink. It'll satisfy the need, right? It'll satisfy you long enough that like I learned that like that stuff doesn't get you the fulfillment that you're looking for. What I've gathered the most wisdom from, and like what I share, is not just from my own personal experiences, but why I'm really lucky to be in the position I'm in is like, as a guy who's like Andy Elliott's right hand guy, I get to sit down with all these high level business owners and be a part of these conversations Andy's having with like guys that are running 8-9 figure businesses. And the main thing I noticed that these business owners say to Andy all the time is they're like, bro, after I bought the cars, the houses, I realized none of it mattered. And like that taught me that the greatest satisfaction always comes from like the progress, and always comes from the growth. It's like never from the car, the house, the money. So I'm not fooled by that trap, right? I'm not fooled by an Instagram highlight reel. Like I post my highlights on Instagram, but like I'm not a fan of like buying cars you can't afford, inflating your lifestyle, trying to sell this image to people, because I don't even think that's what really matters at the end of the day.
Right. There's perception of power. People want power, but what does power really mean? I think the most powerful people are the ones that you just said have a strong family unit at home, a strong institutional family, a strong institution at their church or whatever, a strong business, but they realize that this is all temporary. Life is temporary, and you got to give back. You got to. I heard a really cool theory that when you die, right, what do you put on your tombstone? It's not, Brendan, who made a lot of money and drove 3 different Lamborghinis, and you had 2 million followers on Instagram. No, you write, was a good father, a good brother, whatever it may be. People remember the success and how he dealt with business, right? That's what people remember about you. But to your point, the self-indulgence, the short-term self-indulgence, another movie I watched and I think I overlooked was with Matt Damon, I think. It was Air. It was about Michael Jordan, the shoe deal, and he was dealing with Michael Jordan's agent. And about halfway through the movie, he gets in an argument with the agent because the Michael Jordan's agent was working like 16-hour days and was just a real D-bag and only cared about making the money, didn't really care about anybody else other than not even really Michael. He just cared about making sure that he was powerful and his agency got it because he wanted to be the best. And
Yeah.
Matt Damon asks in the movie, he goes, "What are you going to do when you sell? What's going to happen when you sell this business and retire?" And he says, "I'm going to go to a steakhouse by myself and I'm going to eat the most expensive steak with the most expensive drink. I'm going to enjoy it." And at the end of the movie, talks about what happened to these people in the movie and, the short biography of all of them.
Yeah.
And it goes to the agent and the sports agent, it says, did sell out. And he went to that steakhouse, sat there by himself with no friends. And this guy just looks lonely, right? And you got to remember what happens life after business. Maybe you're going to work forever, but what happens life after business? What happens outside of business? Is this all you have, or is this something that, what is happiness then, right? And you start getting into all these philosophical questions, and I think it all ties together. The most successful business people are the ones that find enjoyment, find philanthropy, find all of these things. And I just find it really interesting that you're preaching all of this, not just, hey, you need to be the greatest salesman because you can be powerful on this, but no, you can be the greatest salesman because you have the pillars of foundation.
Amen to that, bro. Yeah, I could not agree with you more. I mean, you see it time and time again, bro. Like the amount of business owners I've sat down with that have had successful exits and accomplished client made it to the top of the mountain, as most people would say, that aren't happy and they're lost, like, is a real thing. I see it all the time. And it's given me the wisdom to know that, see, I learned that if you learn enough and you study enough, soon you'll realize that the hard things are what you need to focus on. Once you've truly matured enough, you will actually start to enjoy the hard things because you'll understand how it works, right?
Right.
Like I've learned this from Andy, right? I told him, I was like, I started to pick up more speaking gigs and, podcasts and all these different things. And like right now my calendar, which is a good thing, is like packed, right? It's like I got 3 speaking gigs lined up over the next month. And like, I'm always, like, I don't know if you ever spoke on a stage or anything like that. And, I know that there's probably certain things that you do in your day-to-day life that like give you the butterflies more than most things.
Yeah.
And you know how it is when you first start putting those things on your calendar, you get the butterflies and you're like, I can't wait for that to be over because then I'll be comfortable again. Well, after going through that cycle so many times, I realized like I want those things on there now because I look forward to the way I'm going to feel after. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's like going to the gym.
I've developed this healthy relationship with pressure and pain. And I think that is the main thing, and like one of my favorite quotes, one of my favorite cliche mainstream quotes that's often overlooked is confront the work. You know what I mean? Like, because salespeople, they do this. They're like, they do what's called creative avoidance, where it's like, like, because I'm a fan of morning routines, but like there's a point where it's like creative avoidance, right? There's a time to work on yourself and there's a time to work inside your business. Like there's a time to just attack, and people will be like, oh, I got to read, I got to study, I got to do this. And it's like, dude, you got to sometimes, like I tell people, follow this 30-day plan and I guarantee you'll make more money. Write down the revenue producing activities that are in your business. There's probably only a couple, maybe 2, 3, maybe 5. And spend 12 hours a day for the next 30 days, every day, no days off, only doing those activities and watch where your bank account goes.
Yeah.
You most likely fall in love with it. And then here's another cool thing, right? Because of the financial habits that I follow, where I haven't fallen for the shiny object syndrome and I haven't went out, I've delayed buying the cars and stuff like that. It allows me to think more long-term. So like me and my fiance, we just started a business and that required tens of thousands of dollars in startup costs and stuff like that. And I was able to bootstrap it and fund it because but if I had the car, I would have to choose one. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like I have to be a little bit more cautious, but with this, I can just bootstrap it. And ultimately, like a good boss, a good leader, that's what he wants for his salespeople. And like, that's what Andy wants for me is, hey, make money in sales, save money, invest wisely, make smart decisions. Once you have enough money, get your money working for you, create leverage, and go, build businesses and stuff like that. And, that's pretty much the life of being a successful salesperson. That's the blueprint. Like, it's pretty well guaranteed that if you just put your head down as a salesperson, focused on being the top 1% in your industry. And I told Carney this too. So when a salesperson comes to me and they go, what opportunity should I get into? I'm like, it's simple, bro. Look at whatever opportunity you're looking at. Look at what the top 1% make. It doesn't matter how hard you row if you're in the wrong boat. And then strive to be the top one. If the top 1%, you'd be okay with taking that amount of income home a year, then like that's a good vehicle to get into. And from my understanding, from what I've learned, I've worked with quite a bit of roofers. You can make $500,000 a year pretty easily as a salesperson if you're good at what you do, right? So the cool part is, and I heard Patrick Bet-David say this one time. He said, there's there's the slow way, the medium way, and then the high, and then the fast lane, right? And going to success and getting financial success. The slow way is to grab a 9-to-5, work for 40, 50 years to one day have enough to retire. The medium way is to become a salesperson, and you can cut that in half or a third or even a quarter, and then you can retire within about 10 years. If you want to take the fast lane, become a business owner, you can get there in 1 to 2 years, but there's a lot of risk in that one.
Right.
But the guaranteed route, and then the route that I'm on is the salesperson lane, where in 5 to 10 years, like it's basically a retirement plan. If you go hard for 5 to 10 years, you can set yourself up pretty good. Like even in the past 2 years, I've created myself a decent foundation to build on, all because of sales, because I decided to cut out the distractions and I started taking my life seriously,
Yeah. And I think the moment that this hit me hard, everything that you just said in my life, before this, I was in investment loans for real estate and investment loans, long-term properties, short-term properties. And I got to review a lot of people's financials. You had to.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who I thought were absolutely killing it in their business all over Instagram. They had these many properties, they're flying here, and they're doing this, they look busy, and they're with this person. I got their financials. I'm like, wait, like this is not that impressive. He can barely qualify for this loan. And then a few years later, when I got out of that business and I have real estate myself, I buy real estate myself quietly. Like, my partner and I are doing really well, but also I'm helping run my father's company, getting to watch him grow with Carney.
Yeah.
There's a close friend of mine, I won't say his name, but he's also a salesman. He does life insurance. And it opened my eyes when as we got closer, he started opening up more about what his business was. And he's sells life insurance to people who aren't, high income earners or anything like that.
Yeah.
And when he told me how much he was making a year, and you would never believe it. You would never believe it. My jaw almost dropped. He's not flashy. He does a lot of things in his life. He always prioritizes his family. He's always doing stuff he enjoys. And then when the time's right, he works really hard. He just grinds for however long he works a day. He grinds, makes the sale.
Yeah.
And I realized in that moment, like, if you want to be successful, you focus on yourself. Don't worry about what other people care, their perception is on you.
Yes, dude, the car you drive, if you judge someone's financial success by the car they drive, you do not understand. You need to learn more about financial success.
Right.
And one thing I'll say, I heard a really good quote. Revenue is for vanity, profit is for sanity. Right. So, like one of the best things I could recommend any business owner or salesperson does, and I learned this from a guy who's worth like over 9 figures. He goes, learn QuickBooks. Just so you know exactly what you're taking home. Because most people think, man, if I could just make $1 million a year, like I'd be happy. Bro, if you netted $1 million, that is a lot of money to net.
Right.
to net is a lot. Like, I tell people this openly. Like, I'm very transparent about what I make and stuff like that. Like, last year was a good year. I made almost 7 figures. I invested like a lot of it back into my business, right? Like, I don't go on Instagram. I'm not like, I'm netting $1 million a year. My business brought that in, but like I invest back into it.
Right.
But I think people don't understand like how much that actually is. Like if you could just get to $1 million a year net, like, dude, you're killing it, bro. Because that, like, I'm assuming this is after you paid your taxes, after you've invested everything back into your business, you've left some cash in the business accounts, and now you just have that for family trips, your mortgage, and Disneyland. You know, like that's a lot, bro.
Right. You think about it, even if you go into, like, think about the most lavish trip you can think of, Greece and Italy, and doing all of the cool things and the flights.
Exactly.
Let's say it's $20,000 trip. I mean, that pretty much would get you whatever you wanted, right?
So you can only take five of those a month. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, only 5. But yeah, no, I have another funny story. Actually, I think you'll like this, from a friend of mine. Again, won't say anybody's names, but of the real estate lending business, and he had this guy who would do a ton, hundreds of properties a year. And when he got his personal financial statements, my friend got his personal financial statements, and he saw that his house was only worth like $220,000.
Yeah.
And his tax returns were over 100 pages. He's like, something's not adding up, right? If your tax returns over 100 pages and you live in a $200,000 house, what's going on? And so when he asked this guy this question. His client goes, "You never live beyond your means." He's like, "Well, I'm not sure living in a $200,000 house making $1 million a year is living beyond your means, but like, you get the point, right?" This guy was like, "I'm killing it in my business. I don't need anything nice. I love my house. I love money. Like, what do you need to flaunt? What do you need an 8,000 square foot house for?" It's like, maybe some people want that, and that's okay if it's within your means. But I think just when you have a purpose in your business, and it's more than just you want materialistic objects, or you want to go on like super nice trips by yourself, like, I think, and like you said, you're investing it back in your business. It gives you purpose. It gives you a reason to wake up every morning and say, this is bigger than just the material object. So, all right. So as we're finishing up here, I just have a few, I guess, fun questions, because we've talked a lot about your success, and it's been pretty heavy stuff. What's your enjoyment like outside of work?
That's a great question, dude. So I'll go back for a second to like what you were talking about right at the end there, because I love what you said, and this will tie into my answer a little bit. So I think, like, to top off what you were saying before, it all goes back to like knowing what you want, right? Because some people want status, and then some people want freedom, and security and things like that, and impact and influence, right? So like for me, like I realized I thought I wanted status, but like I really don't that much, not as much as I want freedom, So like people always ask me, they're like, like I come to the Elliott Group and people are like, bro, like, you going to get that new car now? And I'm like, I have zero desire for a new car right now. Like zero.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why. I just don't want one. I enjoy the freedom of whenever I don't want to do a business with a client to be like, F off, right? But so regarding that, like, I love having freedom. That's my main thing. Dude, I live a simple life. So outside of work, outside of the grind, first of all, I will say this, not ashamed at all. I work 60, 80 hours a week because I love what I do. I'm obsessed with it, right?
Yeah.
So like, that's most of what I do because I enjoy it. Outside of that, love basketball still. I'll still put the shoes on and break ankles when my clients come out here. I always set those up. Golf's growing on me. Pickleball in Arizona, bro, it's picking up like wildfire, man. Like,
oh yeah,
pickleball. You gotta get on the pickleball court, try it out sometime. Grilling out, dude, hanging out with the friends and stuff like that. I mean, I'm a dog guy. We got 2 dogs, recruiting a third today. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're probably gonna pick up another dog. Amazing. Watching movies. And here's something I'll say on this topic, right? A lot of people fall for the trap of grind culture, right? Like, they're like, I gotta grind. I gotta wake up at 5 a.m. I gotta go to bed at 9 p.m. I can't watch TV. I can't watch TV. I can't like go out to dinners. Like, I gotta say no to everything for like a year. And like, I kind of disagree with that, right? Like my routine works like this. Like I heard Alex Hormozy say you should work until your output per unit of time is no longer effective, right?
Yeah.
So like, for example, I wake up at 5 a.m. So past about 7, 8 p.m., I'm not productive at all. Like I could fool myself and sit on my computer till 10, but I'm really not going to get nearly as much done if I just go watch something on Netflix, relax, wake up the
De-stress a
next
little
day
bit,
ready to
right?
kill it, you know? So like, I think success in sales and I just say being a high performer in general is about finding the routines and disciplines like put you in optimal state, right? So like, I know myself. I know how much caffeine I need to drink. I track that to the milligram, bro. Like I know exactly what's in this. You know, a lot of salespeople abuse caffeine. I don't do that. Like I'm very cautious with it because I know it gets me super fired up. So I want to use it strategically. You
Right.
know, but just things like that, dude. Just knowing your routines and rituals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's great. And to me, at least to me, that's the American dream, right? You work hard and make good money so you can play pickleball, golf, watch Netflix at
right.
8:30 at night, and spend time with
Yeah.
your friends and dogs and wife and children. Like that's the American dream to me. You know, you're not grinding, you're not working, 18 hours a day, barely getting any sleep, so you can. So, love that. All right. So, favorite influencer besides obviously Andy Elliott.
Dude, that's a great question. I would say so. I would give two. One, Alex Hormozy.
Okay.
Great, like beast, absolute beast. Number two would be Russell Brunson. You ever heard of Russell Brunson?
I'm not sure. I feel like that sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
Dude, he's a marketing legend. Marketing legend. I've learned so much from him. It's so funny, man. Like, so Robert Kiyosaki, you've heard of Rich Dad Poor Dad, I'm sure, right?
He's the reason that when I quit playing college baseball, I started
Yeah,
investing in real estate. He's the reason.
I love that. So Robert Kiyosaki in his book, in Rich Dad Poor Dad, there's a part that I'll never forget because it had an impact on me at the time. And he's sitting down with a lady who was a writer, and he's like consulting her. She's like, I want to get a best-selling book. And she's like, what do I need to do differently? And he goes, you need to get better at sales because you're a good writer, but you just need to sell your book. And she's like, she got offended. She's like, how dare you? My book, I'm the best writer in the world. Like, why do I need to sell? And he goes, hey, look at my book. Does this say best book ever written or bestseller? And she goes, bestseller. And he goes, okay. So there's no reward for being the best. Only the well-known get the recognition, right? And the reason I bring that up is because there's so many underground people we've never heard of that are so talented, but like the game we're in today, if you want to stand out, is like you got to become well-known, right?
Oh, 100%.
It's
100%.
it's not like, but like, to my point, like there's so many like great minds that just never learned marketing. So like no one knows who they are. It's like I tell coaches all the time, I'm like, dude, you're like the best coach that no one's ever heard of before. You're like the best kept secret, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. All right. 2 more questions.
Let's get it.
These are going to be fun questions. What is your favorite TV show right now?
Dude, I've seen a lot of great TV shows. I'll be real with you. I am in a mode of life where I'm so focused. I can't afford to get hooked on a TV show, so I'm watching I watch movies instead. Because
favorite movie. What movie can you watch more than once?
What's that?
What's your favorite movie that you could just throw on and always like?
Okay, so here's the thing. So for a quick answer, Batman's my favorite movie of all time. Like Dark Knight, the
Dark
good
Knight
one.
Rises, one of the greatest movies of all time.
Oh my God, I could watch that movie on repeat every single day. What's that called? What's that movie called? Never Back Down. Have you ever seen that movie?
Is that the MMA one?
The MMA movie. That one's really good. 8 Mile's really good.
8 Mile's good.
But like, as far as like movies, me and my fiance, we love thrillers because like I'm like the guy I always need adrenaline. So I'm like, I need something to scare the shit out of me. So I've seen so many. We're thinking about opening up a website for couples that's every thriller ever created with like the ratings and stuff like that. Like we keep telling ourselves we really need to do that because like it takes us an hour to find one because we've seen all of them, you know?
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm actually watching. I'm in my Western mode right now. So Val Kilmer, unfortunately, he just passed away, but I'm watching Tombstone for the first time, and
Nice.
halfway through, that's a pretty badass movie.
I love it.
All right, last fun question: Florida or Houston? Who's gonna win tonight?
So this is going to sound really bad. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh man, you're a basketball guy. You don't watch March Madness?
Dude, I need to get with it, bro. It's been a
No,
crazy,
it's
it's been
okay.
a crazy March.
Okay.
But I will say, so are we in the Final Four, or is it
National
the
national
national championship tonight? Dude, you just gave me something to do later, bro. Thank you.
Yeah, fine. I'll change the question up because this you'll definitely have an opinion on. Who's the GOAT, LeBron or Jordan?
Oh, dude, that's so tough.
I'll tell you mine. I think it's Jordan, undoubted. No questions asked. But I'm curious. What do you think?
Yeah. So I would honestly say Jordan. That's my knee-jerk response. But it's just like, dude, this like the GOAT is so subjective. You know what I mean? In sports, it's like, it's like, what are we based on what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like based on winning games, because like there's more, like I don't know. It's so hard. But like just for to give you an answer, I would say Jordan because he's a stud. Because like you probably seen the Last Dance.
Great, unbelievable. Yeah,
dude, they killed it. See, like if Netflix can make a documentary about LeBron that frames it to where he tops that, then people will be like, "Oh, LeBron's the GOAT." But like, they killed it on that documentary, dude. So
even Netflix when they did the USA basketball team.
Yeah.
And they talked about how Kobe ran right through his teammates' chests in the USA Olympics and they're like, oh my, like, or the fact that they came back from partying and Kobe's 5 a.m. he's going to play basketball. Like, okay, maybe he's the GOAT, So I understand it's tough. Like when you have a narrative and you construct a narrative that these guys.
I almost threw you a curveball and said Kobe. But
I respect that answer. I do respect sheer influence. There's so many people that love basketball because of Kobe. So I don't think that's a crazy answer. Well, Brendan, I appreciate you coming on, man. This was a lot of fun. It's always special to have someone on with your type of influence and the experience you have, especially working with Andy. And I really hope that our listeners, and I hope that we can do this again and keep sharing as much wisdom as possible. And I love learning from guys like you, and I hope we can have you back on here in a few months.
You're the man, bro. Happy to do it. And this was one of my first times really getting to meet you, but dude, you're doing some great stuff, man. So definitely cool to be on.
Awesome. Next time in Arizona, I'll pop out and say what up. We can get around to golf in there, maybe some pickleball.
Dude, you got to, bro. You got to.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
All right, dude. Well, hey, thanks a lot, bro. Talk soon.
Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit my way, or the highway. And in the driveway is a nice range. Cause I grind through the climb, I invite pain. You'll never hear me, bitch, nah, I don't complain. Just gotta flip the switch and you can go and obtain. And